that they can relate to the story that you're telling? Is your story actually inspiring or influencing people around you to want to take the information, knowledge, and wisdom that you're sharing and applying it to your business or their business? You know, really having clarity around what solutions you provide is an important story to tell. It's not enough to just say, I do this, right? Or A, B, and C. It's more about how I can solve your problems and how my services and my business can guide you to the results that you're seeking. So, identifying why people need you is extremely imperative, and highlighting yourself as the expert as well. So, this is an opportunity to really look in the mirror and say to myself, what story am I actually sharing? Like, what messaging am I sharing with the world that allows them to see me as a reliable solution for the life of their business? Or if it's just a particular service or product that you're promoting. So, everybody is storytelling, whether you believe you are or not, is neither here nor there. What you're saying to your audience through your actions, through your social media, through your literature, through your website, it is telling a story. And I assume that people really want to perfect that craft so that they're telling the right story so that it promotes their business. Next slide. So this is really about you. And this is something that I offer quite heavily in my brand audits, a service that I offer people, is this opportunity to really connect with your past, connect to the history of what's made you you. We all have a story that led us to the very career or industry that we're involved in right now, a story that defined you, maybe hardships that you overcame that helped lead you to the place that you are now. What is this power that you possess? How is it going to help people? And what gift are you offering them? You have to really look at not just telling the story, but telling it in a compelling way that reaches people and makes them see you as the solution. So, how did your story empower you? You know, how do you provide a solid human connection through your story? So, our ability to sort of connect is our ability to share our story with people. That connection inspires people to get involved. That connection inspires people to want to use your services. So, I'm going to share an example. I have a client who has been doing real estate for over 2 decades and just felt like people weren't understanding how passionate she was about this and what it is she wanted to offer people. So after conducting a brand audit and learning more about her, her story, her accomplishments, this perceived goal and vision that she has for herself, we figured out a very unique story that really guides people directly to her. And that is that her initial first commercial real estate experience was a complete disaster. She lost money. She experienced huge mistakes. Her real estate agent that helped her with it didn't even show up to closing. So she already experienced everything that could possibly go wrong in the industry, but she was afraid to tell that story. And yet today, that is the story that gets people directly to her doorstep or her digital footprint saying, you've been through what I'm afraid to go through the most. And this is why I want to work with you, because you already know the worst of what can happen. Someone who has navigated tumultuous waters is better equipped to guide you on a path to the solutions you seek than someone who is demonstrating the utmost perfection and may not necessarily be able to find a familiar connection with you in order to really address your fears and your concerns. Let's go back. Yeah. So everyone really needs to take the time to understand their own story if they want to communicate well with their audience. So the gentleman who's in construction, why? What led you to that space? What are you hoping to accomplish? What is it that you really want to do for people? And let's find the language to tell that story so people can feel the connection and the passion that you have that will drive their business solutions. All right, next slide. So, what is going to make us a great storyteller? We talked about some of those things initially, right? This ability to connect with people and to have our message inspire them and influence them. But there's some things that really need to be prevalent in your ability to tell stories. And you don't have to go get a master's degree to find that out. I'm going to give it to you right here. That is first and foremost, the most important ability to provide great storytelling is trust. Our feelings about the storyteller really do influence our reaction to the story. If you are a consultant or a coach, what I've learned over the years is that people are more drawn to the coach than they are the actual service. I mean, how is it that you pick people you're going to work with? You have to feel a connection and you have to feel a sense of trust. If you are a real estate agent and you're going to be helping people sort of put together their finances, one of the biggest fears your audience might have is judgment. They might be concerned that you're judging their financial history. They're concerned that they're being evaluated and their worth is being deemed by their credit score while they're trying to accomplish this huge goal. So, if you want your audience to trust you, you have to make sure that they are clear that you're not there to judge them and that you really are there to help them reach the level of success that they are trying to reach and really confirm with them that they are worth every step of that journey and that you're there to guide them. That is essentially the trust that your audience is looking for. Another one is reliability. The more people identify with your story, the more likely they are to really be persuaded or to feel a connection that makes them want to work with you. In the example that I provided, this real estate agent now is leading with everything that could possibly go wrong. Isn't that a real estate agent you want to work with? Someone who's already identifying to you that they know all the things that can go completely disastrous in this process. Because if they are thinking about it and they're presenting it to me, I immediately lose the fear and I want to rely on their expertise because I know they will guide me. Then you're a GPS, right? You're helping people navigate, or you're a lighthouse shining and your light on whatever they deem important. But the idea is to hold their hand and let them see that you are reliable. Familiarity is important. All of us want to work with someone who have experienced something we've experienced, or where there's some kind of shared value or shared experience that allows us to see each other and to connect. So if I'm a doula and I have experienced birth myself, I can provide a familiar story to mothers who are going through the situation and say, I recognize your fears, I recognize your concerns. I recognize these are all the things you think about, and here's what I provide. A lot of the times we talk around everything we need to be saying to our audience, but we need the clarity to be able to speak directly to them and have them understand what you're saying. So here's a huge rule that I think is very important for all of us: simplicity. Are you telling your story in a simple way, or are you speaking over your audience's head? If I'm going to talk to an investor or someone who's going to teach me how to invest, I want to understand their language. I don't want to be overwhelmed in that conversation and feel like we are in a totally different hemisphere and not even having the same conversation. So, simple and strong is important. I like to say compelling or profound because each of us have a compelling and profound story, whether we know it or not. But telling it in a simple way that allows your audience to feel as though you're speaking directly to them and as though they understand you is huge in terms of gaining interest for your business. And drama. I mean, who doesn't love a little drama, right? We want to hear the dramatic things that happen because then it's a real story. There's not always great things that happen in a story. And the particular real estate agent that I'm talking to you about, she now leads with stories of the worst things that could happen. Well, that drama is a little bit entertaining, but it also gives you the sense of ease as well that the person is considering what can happen and sharing with that with you in order to protect you. So these are really important pieces of what it takes to be a great storyteller for your business. While they're simple, they are not easy to accomplish. And so sometimes we need to take the time to really consider, are we establishing trust? Is what I'm saying coming across as reliable? Do people believe that I have the expertise to offer to them to guide them to where their desired goal is? Am I familiar? Is my communication familiar? Do they see themselves in me? Am I telling it simply? And most importantly, is there some entertainment or compelling fun, excitement around what I'm saying that makes people excited to get involved in the work that I do? So these are things I really like you to consider when you are ready to tell your story. Okay, next slide. In addition to that, we want to focus on what makes you unique. Every single person on this particular call has their own identity, their own voice, provides individual solutions that the others may not, even if you're in the same industry. You have a unique perspective. And what is that promise that you're making to your audience, your customers, your client, your future potential clients, right? What is unique about you that allows you to stand out and present your offerings in a way where it's creating a new understanding about the solutions, right? So for me, I focus a lot on diversity and inclusion, right? And one of the things I offer my clients is an inclusion audit, where I audit their organization for their behaviors, attitudes, and processes and determine, is it leading them to inclusive practices or inclusive workplace culture or not? In order to really determine how I'm unique, I really focused on my passion and what I do for people. And I've created my own lane, the inclusion architect, because I architect solutions for organizations that provide a sense of inclusion in their workplace environment, but also in the overall vision of their company. That's what makes me unique. And that is my promise to my customers. So please take the time to really understand, what is my identity? Am I someone that's overcome something and that's what's driving me to do this business? Do I have this unique skill set? Where did I get it from? How is it aiding people? Where is my voice? What solutions do I offer that's different from the rest? It's really important to make your audience understand that your perspective is unique and that the promise that you make to your customers is a unique one. Some people don't make that necessarily present in the relationship with the customer. You should have a promise to your customers. And it can be simple. Again, simplicity is key. My promise is that everyone is going to get an opportunity to hold a mirror up to their brand or hold a mirror up to their organization, right? And gain some positive solutions that will help them achieve their goal, right? Whether it's inclusion or in brand work. The idea is that my offering is unique and who I am is unique enough that no one else is standing on that stage with me. It's just me, my stage, and my audience listening to my voice, my perspective, and my unique identity. Okay, next slide. And what we're really talking about here, and we can continue to talk around it, but we're talking about the power of empathy in our business. Empathy through storytelling. And for those of you who don't know what that means, it really is the opportunity to see through someone else's eyes, right? Or think through someone else's mind or heart. But to understand and see someone else's perspective is imperative in your storytelling. Otherwise, you're just telling a story, and that's not a strategic way to bring business to your organization. Strategic storytelling is establishing trust, being reliable, being familiar, telling your story simply, and really including some entertainment in that. And the strategy that you roll that out with is understanding what your audience needs. Because how can you see through their eyes if you haven't taken the time to understand what they need? So, for example, with this real estate agent, she needed to really get back to the worst situation, in her business was going through this disastrous closing that just went left in every possible way. So let's talk about what her audience needs then. Her audience is afraid of judgment due to their finances. Her audience is afraid to make mistakes. Their audience is, so you have to really identify, like, where is my audience in terms of what they're dealing with? If you own a moving company, well, your audience is stressed. There's always a sense of urgency. They're concerned they're not going to meet deadlines. Present yourself as the solution for that audience. and make sure that your voice and identity takes into account what they're dealing with. If you have not done this, then you're essentially just kind of putting together a business and messaging and hoping that it's going to be an impactful connection with people. But at the end of the day, you really want to make sure that you understand where their fears are, what their concerns are, what could happen, and you speak to that and let them know that you fully understand where they're coming from and that you absolutely want to provide solutions, but more importantly, you are a reliable source of information that can guide them through the difficulties. And that's empathy at its finest. All right, next slide. Again, I have to clarify how important trust is, and that's why it's number one on the list of important storytelling, right? Trust, whether you are telling a story or dealing with a client, trust is always at play. There is never a time where trust does not need to continuously be sort of redefined, reestablished, and maintained in your interactions with your audience through storytelling. So let's talk again about why storytelling is so important in this way. So, removing fear is what makes people trust you. And the clients really do need you. So there's a few things they need to know about you that we talked about a little earlier, but I want to dive in a little more. Your audience is not looking for you to be perfect. There it is. I said it. They are not looking for you to come across as perfect. They need to know what you've overcome. They need to know your trials and tribulations as it relates to the business that you're offering. How did that catapult your career to where you are? Tell your story. I've said that 20 times. I'm going to say it 50 more in this workshop, right? You can guide them without judgment, but you have to tell your story to gain that trust, right? They are worthy of the solutions, and those solutions exist within you, but they won't believe you unless you tell your story. They need sound and solid advice, and the only way they will believe that you have it is if you tell your story. So at the end of the day, trust is huge, but building that trust is imperative because it will never be what it could be. You will never strengthen and maintain the trust without telling your story. So gaining clarity on your story for your business right now is one of the most impactful and important things that you can do. Next slide. Credentials. Now, this is a sticky subject, and people have a lot of different feelings about how to do this. So, I want to talk through a couple different scenarios with you about what it really means to present yourself as the expert. And that's essentially what we're talking about. What does it mean to present myself as the expert? If I am telling the story of the things that I've gone through and saying that I'm the solution, and someone says, prove it, how do I prove that I am the solution they're seeking? Well, you have to be able to talk about your experience, your skills, your talents, and what makes you exceptional in this space. If I am, again, someone who owns a moving company, it's not enough for me to just say, I can move you. Can you imagine if that was my commercial? I can move you. I mean, you're not going to get a ton of business. And that's not a story, that's a statement. And that statement doesn't come with any proof. So why are you doing this? Right? And what is your personal connection and experience to this? What are the skills you've maintained? Right? What are the expertise that you can necessarily brag about? And here's what I really want to highlight because I find culturally bragging is different, right? Some cultures were raised to not be braggadocious, which makes it really difficult when it's time to talk about the amazing things that you've done. And some cultures are taught to lead with their credentials, right? I mean, in some spaces, you shake someone's hand and you provide an introduction and you've shared your name, your title, potentially your stature in and your success level, and maybe even your salary just by presenting and saying who you are. But at the end of the day, those are people who have been taught to necessarily like brag and share their testimony of who they are. For those that find this very difficult, I want you to take a shift and consider a different approach. It is important for your audience to know that you have credentials. It is important for your audience to know how many years you've done this. It's important for your audience to understand that you're the expert. And if you have not weaved the story of who I am and why I'm doing this and why you need me and I'm the expert, your audience is at a loss. They're not even aware of why they should work with you. And I can guarantee you, they will give business to someone who is clearly defining why they're the expert, right? So here's something that I sort of recommend people do. If you are God fearing or spiritual, you acknowledge that God gave you some talents and gifts in life. And if you need to define your expertise as a talent or a gift that was God given, you may be more inclined to share it as a testimony. So I don't start conversations with how many degrees I have. That feels very wrong to me because my family's from the West Indies and that's not how you talk to people. But I needed to take the time to really say, well, what does make me an expert and allow me to compete with other people who are providing the same or similar level of skills and expertise in my field? How do I wear this hat confidently? I share it through a testimony. So I'm able to tell you guys, I worked in corporate for 15 years as the only person of color in most companies that I worked for, and I felt unseen, unheard, and unvalued. But I knew that I believed storytelling is what helped me solve so many problems and crises for clients that I took the time to go back to school and I gained a master's in digital storytelling. And now I'm here to help other people tell their story. That comes across in a very different way. That comes across as something that people can receive as, yes, my expertise, but how I'm using it to help you. So it's really important that you find a comfortable way to express the confidence that you have in your skills and talents and your expertise, and to even share as a testimony the talents and gifts that God gave you that you are using in your business to help others. So, really understanding that approach and that lane for yourself and determining what feels comfortable to you is imperative. You have to be able to explain to people why your skills, why your talents, and why your expertise make you so good at what you do. And again, if you can't talk about it as self because that feels selfish or non humble, then take the time to focus on what God gave you as God given talents and how you're using them in your business, whichever is more prevalent to your story and your style. But really outlining what makes you the expert is something that your audience needs to hear you say. Otherwise, if I just say, I do hair, that's very different from me saying, I've done hair for 35 years. I own 4 salons and I am responsible for making celebrities and high profile influencers beautiful every day. Do we all kind of see the difference between really being able to demonstrate myself as the expertise? Because your audience doesn't know. They don't know unless you tell them. And you have to be able to speak in a confident way about what it is you provide people. All right, next slide. Okay, so a few more tips for storytelling that I think will really help. Don't censor the drama. It damages trust. Don't make don't make your story sound all peachy keen. There's been some hiccups here and there. There's been some roadblocks or hurdles. You don't need to censor that. It's okay to communicate with your audience that, hey, I've had to jump hurdles to get where I am. Let me help you skip that, right? Real life really does have its ups and downs, so people aren't looking for you to be fake. They're looking for real examples. If I tell you something that's fake versus telling you a real story that I've overcome, which one is going to be more heart, thumping, more profound and more compelling? One's going to stick with me. If I understand what you've been through and how difficult it was for you to get where you are, I'm going to respect your story. And so that's why we don't want to just completely remove um, or censor information that will really strengthen the connection we have with our audience. So the more they identify with your story, the more it resonates with them. Let's talk about resonate. I mean, it's one thing to hear a story and it's another to tell someone about it. It's one thing to hear a story, and it's another to go home and think about it and how it relates to your business and how it inspired you. It's another thing to tell a story, and it's another thing to have someone hear your story and then reach out to you to do business with you. That's impactful storytelling. So, I mean, tell a simple story so people reach the conclusions that you want them to reach, and make sure that there is an opportunity to establish trust and that it's familiar, because that's what you need your audience to feel, is that there is some sense of familiarity, there is some excitement and compelling, profound connection between us now that I've heard your story, and ultimately I trust you. If we can reach that place, your audience is coming to you. All right, next slide. All right, and here's the fun light bulb moment. Next. Next slide. Yep. You have a compelling story. You may not have been able to identify yet what it is. And this is a difficult thing to do. I mean, if a lot of us could dive into ourselves and pull out our story, everyone would do it. Essentially, most people need help. And you may have the gift to pull your story off on your own, but most people need help. Really clarifying their story, finding out the language that's best to tell it, and more importantly, identifying your superpower. Next slide. Your superpower is essential. Okay. And people don't talk about that a great deal in your business, but when you're telling your story, I should be clear on what your superpower is. In this particular setting, telling my story, after learning to do digital storytelling, I found an immense passion and excitement around helping people tell their stories. And that is now my superpower. I have the gift that helps people tell their story in a way that's compelling, profound, and resonates with their audience. That's my superpower. You need to be clear on what your superpower is, and you need to own it. And everyone that you interact with should be clear on your superpower as well. And that is done through telling your story. Next slide. This is something that I think is just really powerful and impactful in where we're going in this day and age. Again, this is not about marketing and ads all the time. This is about successful brands of the future, and that is caring about people, not ads, not marketing, not more branding for your brand. It's about connecting with people, especially with what's going on in our world with COVID. Right now, people aren't getting the opportunity to work together in person as much. The solutions that they're seeking are even more daunting to find because everything's online. How do people know the difference between just you being a brand and the difference between you actually caring about their future? That kind of empathy needs to be involved in your storytelling. Next slide. Here's another one. You don't design for brand. Stop talking about your brand as if it's separate from you. Design for yourself, design for people and how you want to interact with people, right? So it's the interaction with the brand, it's not the brand itself. If you are your own brand, imagine a stage that you're standing on. That podium is essentially your brand. And how do you want people to interact with you at that podium? It's not just about talking to people, it's about creating a connection. And so we're moving out of the brand, the marketing, the ads, and we're moving into, let's tell stories that ignite and inspire and influence and engage. And that should be the emphasis of your brand. Okay, next slide. One of the things that I offer people is a brand audit, and that's helping people gain clarity on their story, how to tell it, who they're telling it to, why they're telling it, what's important and unique, what are helping people articulate the solutions that they provide, really creating a blueprint or charting the course of where it is they're headed with that, hearing opportunities that they haven't necessarily considered that could optimize their business, developing the language and the content that does ignite and inspire your audience, strengthening the connection with the audience, and having a really clear understanding of who you are, what's important to you, why you're doing what you do, and how it aids people, right? But essentially, you need the content and the language clarified so that it comes across in an effortless, authentic way. Telling your story in an authentic way will resonate with your audience. Okay, next slide. Questions. we're at that place. Any questions about what we've talked about today? Oh, there's got to be some.
I'm trying to find to see if I have anything in the chats. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
So first of all, I'd like to apologize for the glitch in the system. This is the we can all say we've probably been webinared out. This is the first time it wigged out on me, so my apologies.
No worries.
Ms. Barn, I was so looking forward to hearing everything that you shared today. Most importantly, I like how you stress about, the perseverance of doing business. Not every time you tell your story or you come out to sell, you're going to go through a lot of no's. So perseverance and sharpening and honing your story to your audience. That rang very true to me, because again, the simplicity of the language that you're using, because you have your degrees, does not it doesn't it's not it doesn't behoove you to sound superior to someone, but saying, I've had this experience, I went to school, I committed to years of education, and because of that, I'm able to speak to this. So I found everything you said so true and so helpful, because oftentimes I did not have a very extensive educational background. So coming into these spaces and having people speak language that is very, the terminology that's very specific to some industries, made me feel left out, and at times scared to ask the question for fear that it was a common sense question. However, it wasn't common to me. So I love how you brought that up, and the fact that many of us are working with large governmental spaces, other primes, what we call primes, or larger, for example, our construction friend. How I can't imagine the fear of approaching somebody like a Walsh or a Passion and fearing that, yeah, I'm too small, should I even be speaking to them? So what you brought today is so valuable and important for our businesses to know their story. And I also feel how this works into creating their capability statement, because that's your one sheet, one page story that you're going to be submitting. So if you could speak to that a little bit. I thought, as you were speaking, I'm thinking capability statement, because aside from you speaking your story, you also need to write it and have it in a concise way for people to know, number one, what your story is, what you're offering, and to who.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to answer, but in the meantime, if you go to the last slide, people can also see my email address if you want to sign up for one-on-one coaching hours to dive a little more into your story. And I think you bring up a huge point, and that is that, the degrees don't necessarily make you. Your ability to stand in a room and demonstrate what you offer and that people need you is what essentially is going to bring more customers and clients to your services, right? The degree is just a piece of paper, but if you've put in a significant amount of work and time in developing who you are and why you're doing what you're doing, as long as you are speaking with conviction, right, then your audience is going to feel the connection. And me saying I went to Harvard or I went to Yale isn't enough of a human connection. That's not a compelling, profound connection. So one of the ways you can compete is really having a solid, clear, understandable, relatable story that presents you as the solution to your audience. And that is essential for your capability statement. In fact, if your capability statement doesn't highlight a little bit of your story, I recommend starting over, because it's extremely important to be able to share a brief sort of narrative about who you are, why you do what you do, and what it offers people. I know we're going to have another session, and I'm staying in touch, keeping track of the website, because our next session is about demonstrating that you're the solution, right? And that is imperative as well to storytelling. Is why is it that what I offer such a great solution? How is it any different than you going and working with A, B, C, or D? If there's a tremendous amount of options, then understanding your offering, your story, is what's going to help people connect with you. So If I start this by telling a story, guaranteed you're going to walk away and you're going to think about that story later. And at some point, when you're faced with needing to do something for yourself, that in terms of telling your story, you're more than likely going to reach out to me because you know that I took the time to craft my story and you felt it was compelling and it did connect with you. So at the end of the day, every last one of you has a story. No one is exempt from their story. You may not have clarified it yet, you may not have got to the heart of it yet, you may not have found a way to weave that through your services to connect everything, but at the end of the day, you are a bridge.
Yolanda, thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce my teammate, Christina Nguyen. Christina was very instrumental in bringing us here today. I want to thank her for connecting us with you. I very much look forward to our future sessions. So everyone on this call, please stay tuned for our announcement of the next event and bring in more of your friends, because I felt that so much of what we're doing is government speak and certification and procurement and grants. But this is something different. This is something that all of us could work on right now to potentially open doors for these other opportunities. So I'm going to hand it over to Christina. Christina, if you could field the questions as well, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Irma. And to piggyback off of what you said a little bit earlier, specifically about capability statements. When
Mhm.
you all think about those key differentiators, if you're doing construction, it's not a whole lot of variables that are different. Construction in different industries are pretty standard in some of the offerings. But
Mhm.
when you think about your story, your experience, all the things that brought you to be where you are now, those are the things Yolanda is talking about, and those are the type of components that when you have a buyer looking through your capability statement, coupled with the opportunity to have a conversation or send an email, giving even more context about yourself and why you are the solution. This stuff is really important. And I work with a lot of you all when it comes to government contracting, getting certified, maneuvering procurement and RFPs, the whole nine. Storytelling and relationship building is a very important component. Just because you get certified does not guarantee you will get a contract. It takes more than that. You have to show up to the networking events. You have to put a capability statement together and do some outreach. So this is just really, 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 it's great. Yolanda is phenomenal at what she does. Please take advantage of the one-on-one coaching option and talk to her specifically about your organization and see this is what she does, so she can just give you some ideas that you just may not even be thinking about or know that they're even there. So I appreciate you, Yolanda, sharing your knowledge with us. Now, we did have Jillian. You wanted to ask a question, so I would please encourage you to just unmute yourself, Jillian. Jerry Hopkins, he said that you were Johnny on the spot. The light bulb is on for Jerry. So we are so happy to hear that.
Good, Jerry.
So
I'm
go
glad to
ahead,
hear.
Jillian. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Perfect. Thank you very much. This is Jillian Garcia with Valdez Engineering Company. And one of my questions is, I know that obviously when you are the owner of the company, you have a lot of enthusiasm and passion for your company, and the reason it was founded should come out very clear.
Good.
When you are helping the owner of a company deliver that message, is there anything you should change? Should you be, as a member of the team, just copying that message, or do you need to base it in your own kind of personal brand and the reason like you're supporting the company you work for? And how is there a distinction between the two, or should you be delivering the business's message, and that should be separate from your own personal brand?
Well, if you're signing on to another business or representing another business, you have to find your personal connection to that brand because people will see right through it if you don't. So it really you do need to have some personal buy-in. And you might need to find a way, I'm not sure of the structure, but you might need to find a way to not only say, this is what it means to me and why I support it, but this is what I also, so you want that opportunity to take it in a next step and say, but I also believe that doing this work provides the opportunity for, I'm bullet pointing at that point, A, B, C, or D. If it's someone else's message, you do need to believe in it. There has to be this essential buy-in. Otherwise, people will see right through it. So I would say, if it is someone else's message, what about their message or what about their branding connects with you directly and why you're doing it? And that's what you want to focus on the story you're telling in terms of why you're doing it, what it means to you, and what your angle is. So even if you're under an umbrella organization, you still have the opportunity to take whatever story they're telling and make it directly impactful for you so that other people can relate to that experience.
Yolanda, if I could add, is maybe a little bragging that the value that you're bringing to that company, in addition to that company's passion and objectives, you bring a lot of value yourself. You're not on there because they found you in the street. There's something about you that brought you into that company.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Any more questions? Okay, well, either I hit it right on the head or people need more time to consider.
I think you did. I think you did, Yolanda. You touched upon a lot of items that, like I said, many people are fearful to come out to bring up. And I think you hit everything right on the head. I came into the space when I worked for the state of Illinois. I just retired recently, but I came from a space of working behind a cubicle for many, many years, and coming to be outreach for a program and having to spread the word and educate people on the benefits of, certification. It was a very scary thing to do, but I think what endeared and trusted a lot of people gained trust in me is that I didn't speak that governmental language. I spoke just as I speak. I didn't make up terminology. A lot of it I didn't understand, and I wasn't afraid to Google it. And I lost that fear of raising my hand and saying, what does that mean? And if you're using a term, oftentimes I would tell my own, supervisors, administration, if I don't understand you, how do you expect people, small business owners, to understand and embrace a program that they can't decipher on their own? So oftentimes communication is very important, and the level of communication to tell your story and have people embrace it and understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we all know when someone's talking over us, right, as opposed to us. And you know when someone's conning you by talking over you. So you don't want to be perceived in that way. You really want to be familiar and relatable and simplistic in a way that people feel like, oh my God, like what Christina said really just makes me understand. She understands exactly what I'm going through and what I'm faced with. And if she solved this for other people, she might be the solution I'm looking for also. But you don't do that by conning people or talking over them.
Exactly. And then just one more point, make your story as concise and short. Many people, like we're talking with government and procurement opportunities. They don't want to they don't want to read a dissertation on your, history. So I'll let you touch on that, Yolanda.
Yeah, I learned something very simple in grad school, and it's keep it pithy. Didn't even understand what that was, but I quickly learned, essentially people don't want a dissertation. They want to know in the most concise, simple way you can tell them, right? So it's not just about telling a long story to be storytelling. Your story should be really succinct. Why you're doing this, what it means to you, what led you to this space, and what you're offering people. And that can be done in a short period of time. I do a visualization where I have people, step on an elevator and someone that they look up to steps on that elevator, and you have to get from the first floor to the 43rd floor. That's about how much time you have to tell your story of who you are and why you do it, right? And you're trying to differentiate yourself from what everybody else is doing. So you may not have the opportunity to tell a full story, but just in the conversation and the information that you're giving, that is telling a story. And so how do you take advantage of that person's ear and make sure it resonates with them so that they're walking away saying, I'm going to look at their website. I got their card. I'm going to reach out to them. they need to feel like you understand who they are and what they're trying to accomplish and why you're the solution. So I'm looking forward to the next workshop. I'm sure it'll be posted on the website when we talk about that, how to demonstrate that you are the solution to whatever dilemma they need solved.
Thank you, Yolanda. Everyone on this webinar today will be receiving invitations. We'll also, constantly expanding our network to include more people to take advantage of our educational and, informative webinars. Again, I'd like to, say thanks to everybody that attended today. Like I keep saying, we're being webinared out, but, things like these are very important. I love the fact that what Ms. Barton is presenting today is unique to anything else that I've heard in the past. I've been webinaring for 2 years, and it's always, broader subjects. So I really appreciate your expertise and you sharing it with us. It means the world to us. So thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you. Christina, do you have any parting words before we hand it over to Yolanda?
Can I ask Yolanda a question before you go?
Yes,
Certainly.
Willie,
Go
how
ahead.
are you? It's always great to see you.
I was in my truck. I kept going in and out every time I went through certain areas. So I kept jumping in, jumping back out. But I heard the gist of it, and then it goes back to like same thing you keep telling me about some capability statements and knowing how to tell the story. So it was a good Zoom, whatever you want to call this meeting, And I did want to say thank you. And I took a picture of an email while I was driving because I'm going to shoot her an email and take her up on that one-on-one coaching.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Willie and everyone here, if you didn't capture her, Miss Barton's contact information, do not hesitate to reach out to myself or Christina. We would be happy to provide that to you. And again, take advantage of these one-on-one consultations. I don't know how often I'm going to say, I don't see this anywhere else. I don't see this type of services being offered, and they're free of cost to you. So this is a once in a long time opportunity. Do not let it go. Again, we've seen firsthand how approachable and understandable Ms. Barton is. Take advantage of her extensive background in all things communication. Christina?
I would just close out by saying, being on the other side of the table, so being an entrepreneur, but then also on the other side, working for government organizations and meeting business owners, and these are established business owners. When you can't communicate concisely what you do and what solution you offer, it makes us feel like you don't know what you're doing. You could be in business for 35 years, be the best person at doing what you do. But if you can't communicate to me and you've been doing it for 35 years, I'm going to feel like, well, you don't know what you're doing. I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be cordial. I'm going to shake your hand. I'm going to take your business card and all of that. But it won't land. It won't land. So what Yolanda is saying is so imperative. You want people to remember you. With procurement, these transactions don't happen immediately. It's not e-commerce. You're not walking into a retail store. These are things that take time. We know that contracts are not available all the time. They come around maybe once every 3 years. These are not interactions that are happening as readily as others. And so being able to communicate effectively and have people remember you, that is a skill set. And if you don't have it, you need it if you really want to do well in this procurement space. And just as you continue to grow and get larger clients and things, communication is really important. So please take advantage of what we have offered here. Because like Irma said, you're not going to get this anywhere else. You'll get the workshops, but you won't get the one-on-one coaching through an organization. We haven't seen it. So we feel like we're special in that way. So please tell your friends about upcoming workshops that we'll have. You'll all be put on our newsletter so that you'll become aware. We'll have Yolanda come back, and she already told you the next step here is being able to communicate that you're the solution. So we appreciate you all. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and touch base with me or Irma if you need anything from us here at the ICRR Business Center.
Thank you. I'm going to let Miss Yolanda have the last word, as she's the best at providing these inspirational things to all of us. Yolanda, if you could close us out today, I'd really appreciate it. And thank you again for doing this for us.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys about something that means so much to me. And I really do wish you all the best in understanding your stories and finding the best way to articulate them to an audience that is readily waiting to hear who you are and what you provide people. I look forward to offering one-on-one coaching sessions to those who take advantage. I will mirror, there are very few of my clients that have someone else paying for coaching sessions, so please take advantage of that because that's a rarity in my line of work. So I think what you guys are doing is amazing. And I just wish you all the best of luck in navigating your business and taking advantage of the resources that can help catapult you into the success that you're seeking.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see
Thank
you
you,
next
everyone.
time.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.